On October 18, 2003, Roger Urbanski visited Joe Howard in Rapid City. Discussion of family history beginning from 90 years ago took place. Featured characters included the following: William and Bolcia Brudzinski at about age 52 in 1942. In this photo from about 1919, we see William and Bolcia age 28, Constance age 3, Sabina age 7, Josephine age 5, and Uncle Nowicki. Now here is Josephine Brudzinski in 1938 at age 24. Here is Josephine, October 18, 2003.
When Grandpa decided and Grandma decided to come over here, he came over first with Voya Szczepański?
No, Voya was already here.
Oh, Voya was already here.
And that was one reason why he came to St. Paul.
Oh, I see. And then they worked at Griffin Wheel Works? Down where they locomotive or the train wheels?
Yeah.
And Grandma told me, she said that in the summertime it would be so hot when they would do the furnace.
When they would pour.
When they would pour, they would have somebody take a bag of the extra things they used to make the steel mix, and they'd tie a rope around the guy. And he'd go to the furnace, and if he happened to collapse, they'd pull him back. Talk about OSHA, huh?
Oh.
And she said, and they didn't have safety glasses or anything like that. They just, but I thought that was interesting. Now, did Grandpa come over here without Grandma first?
Oh, yes.
And then what did they do?
Well, then he stayed here and earned enough money to send passage for her and for Sue.
And then the two of them came.
But you know, did you ever know Vujanovi?
Yeah.
Well, he was in the same group of people that came, and they were. Well, he was my mother's brother-in-law. Of course, you know, the passage that most of these poor people got for the money that they were able to pay was steerage, which was way in the bottom of the ship, which is the worst place to be. But they did. Every day, Mama said, the purser, I think they would call this man, would come with this big basket of bread and rolls and herring. Of course, they didn't speak English, so, but the word for herring in Polish is śledzie. And Sue learned, maybe the first time the guy came around, that her mother told her that was śledzie. And so every time the man started coming, she'd say, śledzie, śledzie. So now I don't know how old she was when she came here. Did she ever tell you that?
Well, she was born in, what, 1911? And I thought they came over here in 1914, but I don't know for sure. Or maybe she was older than that, I don't know.
Well, I was born in January 14.
So it was before that then? Okay. I don't remember. See, that's part of the thing.
Well,
Mom's gone, can't talk to her about that.
Yeah.
So then he sent for Grandma. When did Chacha Szczepański, when did she come?
I don't know that.
Oh.
And I don't know whether They must have been, maybe they came together. I don't know.
Now, Boleslaw Szczepański, that's Grandma's brother.
Brother.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
What's
And
his name?
Boleslaw Szczepański, what was his first name?
Bronislaw.
Bronislaw.
Well, he, as you just heard Raj say, that when he first came here, where he worked at Griffin Wheelworks, because that was where Vuya was, and I suppose Vuya got him the job. I'm sure if you could do anything other than that, you would do it, because that was very tough work.
Yeah.
Anyway, he must have stayed there long enough to earn the money to send for Mama, and then
Did he go to work for
he changed jobs.
He went to that iron place on 4th Street, didn't he?
No, he worked for a place called Gas Traction, something like that.
Okay.
Okay, and so made me think of something else that he did that was so funny. Anyway, he worked for this gas, must have been Gas and Traction. Anyway, that, from the way I remember him pronouncing it. And from there he went to Herzog.
Oh, that's the one, Herzog, yeah.
Herzog. And that was it was a foundry, but it was a very, I'm sure, ideal type of foundry situation, because for one thing they had huge ceilings, because we kids would go in there, we'd take lunch to them in the summertime, and the ceilings were huge, and it was always cool in there. No matter how hot it was outside, it was cool in there. And they didn't pour anything big like wheels, like they did at Griffin.
Uh-huh.
They would do small things, you know,
Uh-huh.
brass, not copper, brass, aluminum, and I can remember seeing him where they had these had a table, and then they'd work on these forms and that real fine black.
The molds.
Yeah, the molds.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so he finally went there, and then I don't know if Herzog's closed or things. You know how then the Depression came on, and jobs were hard to find, and so well for a while he worked on one of those government programs, WPA, and then he decided to go in business for himself, and he bought this little shop on Chestnut Street.
Mm-hmm. Uncle Kai tells me that they would do these small pots of aluminum, crucibles they call them, I guess.
Yeah.
And they put it in there, and Uncle Kai says he was just, 16, 17 years old, and they each have a deal, and when they get that crucible and they tip it like this, and
That's molten metal.
yeah, and Grandpa would say to Uncle Kai, he'll say, lift it, goddammit, lift it.
Oh boy.
So that was funny.
Well, he did things on a small scale, but he kept it alive, and I still remember the name. The name of it at that time was Northwest Brass and Aluminum. And in fact, I have one copy of one of the stationery. It's
Do
got
you?
that
Oh,
on it.
good for you.
Yeah.
Good.
And I should make copies of it and send it to all you kids. Anyway, but now the shop, because I don't think they work with aluminum.
Yeah, aluminum, no brass.
Oh, no brass.
No brass.
Okay. So they've changed the name of it completely, but I don't know the name of it. I can't remember it.
It's called Northwest Casting Company.
Northwest Casting. Okay.
And they've got quite an operation over there on Sylvia Avenue.
I understand it's
Yes.
big.
Yes.
It's
yes,
in
it is.
Minneapolis.
St. Paul.
Was it in St. Paul? Okay.
Right off of Snelling. Yeah.
Have you been there?
Yes.
Yeah,
I've got the tour.
It's big, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's really quite a place. Yeah.
But Northwest Brass and Aluminum.
Yep.
The two boys.
Yeah.
They're there.
Kais. So actually, it's a third generation business.
Chris and Mark. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because Daddy started it, and then Kai continued it, and then his sons are doing it now.
Uncle Kai said that when he came back from the Army, that Aunt Connie and I guess Grandma met him at the station. He says, we didn't go home, we went to the shop.
Oh.
Because that was going to be his.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, that was a plan.
Yeah.
Right from the start.
Yeah.
But I had something cute that happened. What was it? Mark and his family were in the Black Hills for a vacation, and they stopped and spent an evening with you and were you there, Bill? Anyway, John and Connie were there. Yeah, John and Connie. Anyway, John, you know, he's a great guy to pull your leg. So we were talking, visiting there.
Just like his dad.
Yeah, and he said, John says to Mark, he says, well, I understand you've got quite a business there that Grandpa started to see, you know, after all they shared the same grandpa. And, yeah, great-grandpa, that would, no, yeah, it would be Grandpa. Anyway, he says to him, I understand you have a good business there that Grandpa started. And Mark says, make me an offer. Oh, we got a big laugh out of that.
Yeah, that was good.
So Grandpa died during the war before Uncle Kai got home.
Oh, yeah.
So who actually supervised the running of the business while he was gone? And from the period of time from...
There was a man by, I don't remember his last name, he was from Stillwater. His name was John. He did all the, you know, took care of the orders and got he was a molder. Mm-hmm. And he did all the work in the shop, and then Connie would do the delivering and bring in surprise. So she ran the shop.
Yeah, she did
with
the
John.
bookwork and everything.
Yeah,
checks,
the bookwork, yeah.
Yeah, she did.
Yeah, she did.
That guy, his name, what I remember, is Shorty Shell, they used to call him.
John Shell.
Yeah, and his Shorty was his, they call him Shorty Shell.
Well, my grandma always called him John.
John.
Yeah. He was a really very nice man. He took care of that shop for them.
I was going to ask you about this. Is this something that...
It was Grandma's.
And where did she have this?
Well, for a long time she used it as a kind of a drape on the back of the sofa that she had on the front porch. Do you remember?
Yes, I remember this.
Uh-huh.
Look.
Well, see, that's wear and tear.
Yeah.
That's not well, it's from being used. Here's another little place here. So what it is, see, this it's like a double woven. I don't know that much about things like that. But this is one weave here and then another one weave here, and they're together.
Yeah, I
So
remember this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It was shortly after World War I, my parents decided to bring my mother's mother and her sister to this country, which they did. And Grandma Steps brought this with her.
Grandma Steps.
Yeah. And did you ever hear about her, which would have been my Aunt Mary? Her name was Mary. Did you ever hear about her?
I didn't know that great-grandma brought her sister, came with it.
Yeah, well, she was the baby. And she must have been, she probably was born a couple of years after Sue was born. Or no, a couple of years before Sue was born. So they were just, you know, almost like little two sisters rather than an aunt and a niece. And so when they came, she went, of course, you know, all she spoke was Polish, but she went to school and she picked it up so fast. It was just amazing. And then she and Grandma, of course, this is just my impression. and I was just, you know, in my early teens. But my impression was that Mary was not pleasing her mother. They just weren't. And so, as soon as she got old enough, she left town. She went to Chicago, where my grandma had a brother. And she went and stayed with them for a while, and then we lost track of her completely.
Wow. Oh, jeez.
Except that before, Grandma was very sick. Grandma died of cancer of the liver. And we still apparently had contact with her, and she came to be with Grandma. And then, this is the strangest thing, my dad took her, she went back on the train, of course, that was the only way you could travel then. And Daddy said to her, "Now write, let us know how everything is." She says, "Okay, I will." And when he came home and told us, because he had taken her to the depot by himself, and when he came home and told us about it, he says, "I'll bet you we'll never hear from her again." And we didn't.
Oh, isn't that interesting?
So he sensed something that we didn't.
Yeah.
Well, this is how we started talking about this tablecloth.
Yeah. The, Grandma Shapinsky, right?
Mhm.
You know, Mary Jo and I, we go out to Calvary Cemetery when she comes,
Mm-hmm.
and we still know where the grave is, because when I was growing up, Grandma and Grandpa, and after church we'd go in the car, and we'd go down to that Jewish bakery on the west side,
Mm-hmm.
and get those hard rolls, and we'd eat the hard rolls, and we'd go to the cemetery, and we'd visit the grave, and it's amazing. We'd drive up, it's down there, and we go and walk right to it. It's really interesting. So she was the great grandma. Now, what is
She was your great grandma.
my great grandma? What is in my house where Mom and Dad lived had 2.5 bedrooms, and there were 6 of us kids, so they're 8 in the house. And we were talking about how we shared bedrooms and stuff, and so on. And then we got talking about Grandma Brudzinski's house. You had 2 bedrooms.
Mm-hmm. 2 big bedrooms.
2 big bedrooms. Now how did you fit in there?
Well, that's a good question.
Do you remember?
Well, we girls, the bedroom toward the front of the house was, I would say that was bigger than the other one. And there were 2 double beds in there, so we kids. And then when Grandma came, for a while, Connie slept with Grandma, I think.
Mm.
So, and Mary, I don't remember a thing about where she slept.
And when Uncle Kai and Uncle George came along, were they sleep in the front, or?
Well, when they were babies, they were in the back room with my folks. Well, by the time, I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, Donna talks about the bedrooms where, I remember certain things, and I can remember sleeping in one bedroom with my brothers, and then she says, well, that's where the girls slept when she got to know me. And I said, well, then where did we sleep? She says, well, you must have slept in the front bedroom. Now, I don't remember that.
Well, that's it.
Yeah. And then where did Mom and Dad sleep? In that half a bedroom. So, but we were wondering about that. One of the things I remember about the house is the kitchen before Grandma had it remodeled there. She had a pantry, and they had that wainscoting around it, and the sink was against that one wall. And I remember when Grandpa Brudzinski, they were just, I suppose, in the process of diagnosing that he had TB, and I can remember he had a coughing spell, and he was at that sink, and he was just having a terrible time. And also remember they took the whole family and took us down to the hospital, and then we had to be tested for tuberculosis too.
Mhm.
I don't know whether I remember being in a doctor's or in the hospital doing that. But that was Grandpa. When did they diagnose that? He died in what, May of 1944, something like that.
Yes,
Mhm.
May 1944, because we got the news about George in November 1944.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've often asked Uncle Kai, I said, well, you know, you were gone, you lost your dad, you lost your brother. He said, you couldn't do anything about it. He said, you were there, couldn't
Yeah.
come back.
Yeah. Yeah. And then during that war, you were there 3, 4, 5 years
Mhm.
sometimes.
Yeah.
And you never got to come home.
I remember a couple of things that Uncle George did. He sent a coconut. Do you remember that?
No.
He sent the
see-
coconut, and he addressed it, and there were stamps on the coconut, and it came in the mail.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, I remember that. And then the other thing I remember, when he was out in, you know, he'd get R&R, but the only place he could come was Hawaii. He couldn't come home. And he sent Grandma and Grandpa this. It was like a ship's wheel, you know, one of those wheels to. And it had all kinds of candied fruit in there from Hawaii.
Uh-huh.
I remember that one. And I also remember he didn't like any of it. So, but,
Oh, sure.
and then she would play with the kids. And I remember sitting at the kitchen table playing with Play-Doh. And she's got all the kids around her and they're playing. She was just great. I remember one time we had this new house, and I had put sod out in front, you know, and the kids were riding out there on their tricycles, and they were kind of rooting it up a little bit, and I'm out there hollering at them, and Grandma's with us, staying with us, see? And she comes to the front door, and she sneaks out. She says, "Raji, Raji," she says, "you could graze your grass anytime, but you can only raise your children once." Never forget that. She did this, you know.
Raji. Yeah, she called you Raji.
Raji,
Raji.
she called me. Yeah, she was quite a lady. Yeah, we would, I remember about the time that you had the flood out here.
Mm-hmm.
I used to come over, I'd bring the kids. When Donna, you'd come too, wouldn't you, all the time?
Sometimes.
Every Saturday I'd go over there and cut her grass for her. And how worried she was about the flooding out here and whether you'd be in it. And I said, well, you know, Grandma, maybe they're not near that, you know, but you guess you were.
Yeah, we were.
But what she would do is we'd get all done, and then she'd say, now we go to McDonald's, she'd say. And we'd go and we'd have McDonald's, we'd buy them, and we'd go out to a park and we'd eat them. So that was, and our kids remember that from. I was going to ask you about my mother and dad. You know, didn't Grandma and Grandpa Urbanski live on Magnolia too?
Oh, sure.
And Grandma lived at 1013, and you get up over, what was that, Greenbrier or whatever that street was?
Cypress.
Cypress, and then down the block, right across from Harrison School,
Uh-huh.
they had their house.
Mm-hmm.
And I think maybe you told me that Grandma, my mother, and Dad knew each other when they were growing up.
Well, they must have. I don't know where the Urbanski kids went to school. I suppose they went to St. Caspar's. I don't know.
Well, my dad went to public school.
Oh, he did.
Yeah, he went to Harrison.
I remember that.
So he would have gone to Harrison, and then if he went to 9th grade, he would have gone to Cleveland.
Well, I don't know how far he went. That's the unfortunate thing. I don't remember. I never asked him that. But I have pictures of my dad and his brothers on a mule in the middle of Magnolia Street, which was dirt.
Oh.
Because you could see Cypress Street up the way.
Mm-hmm.
And here they are sitting on this mule, and my dad, Blondie, towhead, you know,
Yeah.
sitting on there too. And so they lived close to each other, so that must have been how they, I don't know how they met or anything.
I don't.
So
They may have met at a dance. You know, there used to be a lot of dances.
I know Aunt Connie said that when her and Uncle Joe met was at a dance. That one there about Uncle George and Grandpa Brudzinski, one of the stories that was told to me was that Uncle George, they didn't find out, you know, they used to send those telegrams, and they found out through a chaplain's letter that Uncle George had died.
Well, I don't know about that, because after all, you know, I was in Rapid City, and Aunt Connie would know that because she was living with Grandma at the time.
I think that's how it happened, and so that, you know, then there was all this trying to find out what really happened and so forth, and then it was later in like in December, they had a memorial service, memorial mass for Uncle George. Mm-hmm. And remember they used to do that catafalque? They used that fake, looked like a casket and a black pall over it. And we were all going to go to mass. And remember how you could look through Grandma's house through the front door, right straight into the kitchen. Mm-hmm. And she was sitting at the kitchen table. And here comes this guy with his telegrams. And what I remember is it was real thick. He had all kinds, and he's looking through this one, and he gets this one out. And Grandma she thought it was Uncle Kai. But here was a confirmation that Uncle George had died.
Oh.
How awful that was.
Yes.
Yeah. And then, you know, they brought Uncle George's body back, and one of the stories that, well, this actually happened is, my mother told me, is that they had planned the funeral for Uncle George at like 9:30 in the morning, but Father Stoyer calls Grandma and says, this other guy died, one of the pillars of the parish, and they wanted 9:30. And Grandma called Mother, and Grandma was so upset, of course, and my mother, she had those kind of jean pants on, and it was, she rolls them up, she puts on her nylons, you know, just puts them partway, rolls up the socks, puts on her long coat. She said, "George, we're going to see Father Stoyer." And she came back, and the Mass was at 9:30. That's what I remember about that.
Well, speaking of this, would be completely different from what about George, but about your mother and Father Stoyer. He lost his housekeeper one time, and he wanted Sue, your mother, to come and cook for him, and of course she turned him down. But he had heard that she was a good cook, and he wanted her. She said no. He would have been a hard one to please.
He was so gruff, but yet, you know, there would be 6 of us altar boys serving Mass, and he had a little round felt pad that they put the chalice on, you know. Mm-hmm. And you'd come out there after Mass, and there'd be 6 nickels. And if you served 2 serving Mass, you got a quarter. Oh. And then the tradition was when people got married, we would take a basket, each get a basket, and we'd take one of his, that rope they used to wear, mm-hmm. and we'd pull it across the aisle, and we wouldn't let the wedding party out till they left some money. Oh. And then they'd do it, we'd let them go by and let next one. You'd make a few bucks that way.
Oh, sure. To show your appreciation.
Yeah, right. Well, here we are on a Saturday. What are we doing in here?
Yeah, right. And I remember as if it was yesterday. You know how big the classes were, remember?
Big.
Big. I'll bet there were like 60 kids.
I suppose, yeah.
And the nun would kind of travel in between the seats, you know, and look at what you were doing. And I was sitting there writing with my left hand, and she comes along takes the pencil out of my hand and puts it in my right hand. And so I didn't dare use it with my right hand, or left hand anymore. And so this is why I'm so mixed up.
Yeah. I've heard that some of the nuns would tie the kid's left hand behind their back, and then they had to use this hand. So.
They never. I was so timid. I'm sure they didn't. They knew they didn't have to use anything tough on me.
Was this where they had the Polish on one side of the page and English on the other side of the book?
I don't remember that.
Oh, I thought you told me that once years ago.
Did I? Well, I don't remember that. I'm sure. I don't know. I think we must have had an English book and a Polish one.
Oh, I'll have to quit telling that story.
I don't think so, Bill.
How about the violin?
Oh, that's a good one.
That's another one.
Tell us about that.
When my dad brought this violin for me, it was a smaller size because I was still, I must have been about 9 maybe. And so I immediately took it over, you know, the way you hold it this way and use this right hand for the, I wanted to do it this way. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who gave you the lesson?
A guy by the name of Tony Golaski. And we used to go to his house, and I can remember it as if it was yesterday. I'm remembering everything as if it was yesterday. He would sit there on the piano bench with his legs crossed like this, and I'd stand there, and he had a music rack, and I remember the first lesson was on the G string, everything on the G string. I don't know if you're familiar with the fiddle, but anyway, and you know that this is the way I remember it. After I started taking violin lessons, more darn kids in the neighborhood started taking violin from him. He should have given me a commission. Yeah, he lived, let's see, Mendota and Geranium, I think it was.
Oh,
Either Geranium or Rose.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. So I'd walk over, and
Do you
that was how I happened. Remember, I told you. I'm sure I told you this story because you were so close with Father Starr. You know, at one time at the church they used to have a kind of an alms box where you could drop money in for the poor. And one time somebody broke that box open and took the money. And I think they figured out who the kid was. Anyway, this one day I was coming home from my music lesson, carrying my violin, and I went up Josephine, so I was, right there at the church, so I thought I'd stop in and say a prayer. And I went into the church and sat down one of the back pews and knelt there, and pretty soon I heard this creak toward the sacristy, toward the front where the altar is. Here he comes charging up the aisle. "What are you doing here?" he says. I said, "I stopped in to say a prayer." Oh, he just kind of slinked off. I thought, boy, it doesn't pay to stop and say a prayer. But he was probably expecting whoever had broken into that alms box to be back again.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, that was it.
Oh,
Yeah. I think that's the deduction I made about it.
I had an experience with him about the charging up the aisle. He told me we were getting ready for Mass, and there was nobody to ring the bell. And he says, "Urbanski, you go ring the bell." And I said, "Oh, I've never done it." He says, and it was a big rope, and it had a big knot in the end of it.
Yeah.
He says, "You take that," and he says, "You pull it down, and then you let go. And then you pull it down, and you let go." And he says, "It'll ring." He says, "Don't hang on to it, because it'll roll, see?" So I goes up there, and he's watching me out the sacristy door, because you could look straight to the back. And there's this, I can imagine myself in this black cassock and white surplice. And here I go. And that thing, and up I went. Yeah, I let go, and here he comes. Bum, 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 bum. And he's pushed me aside. "Like this," he said, and he pulled on my thing.
Well, he was a lot stronger and bigger than you
Oh,
were.
he used to scare the heck out of me. Boy. God.
Well, see, during that time, we had already moved to Rapid City,
Yes.
so.
Did you? I was asked you about that. The highway, what was it? It was gravel, Uncle Jim?
No, it was paved.
Was it paved?
But it was narrow.
It was narrow, yeah. And you had that Plymouth when you went out there?
Oh, I have a record to show. I can't tell you.
Grandma Brudzinski says you had flat tires coming out.
Oh. And you couldn't buy a new tire for,
Yeah, because of
oh,
the
you
war.
had to
During the
have,
war,
you had to have some kind of a, what was it, they called it, permit or?
Oh, yeah.
You just could not buy a new tire.
Yeah.
So there were a lot, in fact, I don't think you could buy what do they call them?
Retread?
Retreads. You could, I think you even had to have a permit to buy that.
Yeah. Boy, that must have been a long drive back then.
It sure was.
You didn't make it in one day.
No, we stayed.
Yeah.
I forget now where we stayed. Well, when we first came, well, Jim had already been here, and then he came back for us, and Grandma came with us.
Yeah, I remember.
Yeah,
She told us that.
yeah,
Grandma was game to do anything like
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
something
Gee.
new.
Yeah, yeah, she was. That when Donna, our kids were small, little, Grandma would come twice a year. She'd come for a week, stay with us, and
Yeah.
catch Donna up on her ironing, and she would make her kapusta.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
with the bacon and
Oh.
all that.
So you're going to have to say goodnight.
Good night.
I will say it in Polish. Do widzenia. Till we meet again.
Kai Brudzinski.